Well, Larry, we got the end of session is now behind us. It ended this past Saturday in right at midnight, and so since it is the end of the 2-year session, unlike they've done in the, they could do in the previous year, where it's kind of the midway point where they can hold the clock, until midnight, which they have done in the past. So what they've done in the past in the mid break is they said, okay, it's 11:59, and we here pass that we are going to hold the clock, and so that way they can continue on for hours if they want to on discussion. But when it is the end of the 2-year session, once that clock strikes midnight, it is done. It is over with, and there was a lot of fireworks before that clock hit midnight on that Saturday going into Sunday. And a lot of it in the news there, Larry.
Again, I think a total disservice to every taxpayer in the state of California. And when you wait to the last day to do some of the most important legislation on the calendar, and you allow 30 seconds per person to debate it, and the result is bad legislation gets passed, and it only hurts the taxpayers and the residents who, depend on a competent legislature to get these things done. Again, like we talked about last time, Hector, would teachers allow students to wait till literally 5 minutes before the end of a test to start taking the test, and then expect to get a good grade out of it? It doesn't work, but that's what we do as a legislature, and it's not fun. It's a good reminder of why I retired at the end of last year. What they do, it's not fun or funny, and a lot of shenanigans goes on that people really saw would be very disappointed in how their legislators personally act on these last days.
Well, and I think you brought up something key, which is, and I know that several reporters, were mentioned on social media. I don't think it got enough publicity as it should have, which is there was a period of time, because they were being rushed there at the end, where the leadership basically said, any piece of legislation that we have moving forward, everyone will only have 30 seconds to provide any points in favor or against or information on the particular piece of legislation. When in reality, what they do is, if a piece of legislation comes up, someone can go up there and say, look, based on this report, based on that report, or based on constituents here, here's how it's going to impact them, or here's how it's going to benefit them, whether it's a positive or negative way. And like I said, it came close, that final day, and they said, we hereby say, we're going to decree it's only 30 seconds per person. And people were upset about that, because they want to talk about this legislation. They should have the ability to debate, whether you're for it or against it. But they didn't allow that. And it was the leadership who basically said 30 seconds and that's it.
The only thing Republicans have is their voice. They don't have 41 votes in the Assembly. They don't have 21 votes in the Senate. So the only thing they have is their voice. And Republicans know the only way sometimes they can stop legislation on the last day of session is literally with their voice, by speaking on bills, and let's be quite frank about it, so they can burn the clock out, so some of these pieces of legislation don't get passed. So what do the Democrats do? They go, nope, we're going to take away the only tool you have, your voice, to speak on something. And again, it's just a disservice to the people and the taxpayers and anyone who supports them going up there. I don't have anything to lose anymore. I don't work there. Would board of directors be comfortable making these sorts of decisions at 11:50 at night, in addition to having adult libations free flowing in offices going on during this period of time? It's sad, and it's really not acceptable. But that's what takes place, and I'm disappointed sometimes reporters don't point out enough that some of these members probably aren't in a state of aren't in a state that they shouldn't be driving, let alone passing major pieces of legislation. I'll just leave it at that.
Right. But, and the thing too, Larry, is important kind of for everyone listening and watching to realize is that they started that last day of legislation in the afternoon. I mean,
Right.
the week before, people went to the Democratic National Convention, so they weren't focusing on these bills. There have been even during this last week where they've started late, ended early. I mean, you go into the final day and you still have 100 pieces of legislation you've got to go and contend with. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? And then not only do you have 100 pieces of legislation, but then you start in the afternoon. And so that, I think, is part of the problem, is a management of the time. Look, Republicans do have a voice, and they can talk about these legislations, but at the same time, when you're the majority party and you've got all these pieces of legislation, start earlier, start having those discussions, start getting those things through, so that on your last day, maybe you've got 20 left and you don't have 100 to contend with.
Right. The Assembly literally held the Senate hostage on the last day of session because the Senate actually was completing their business, but they had to wait for the Assembly to get the bills back over to them. And so there's this gamesmanship played. The Senate holds a certain number of bills to make sure the bills from the Assembly get over, and vice versa. And on this occasion, the Assembly couldn't get their act together, and the end result was a disaster from a legislative point of view. Passing legislation with little or no discussion. It's just wrong.
And there were also fireworks, that we got to see, and it was just incredible, where there was shouting matches between members. There were shouting matches outside of the committee, outside of the Assembly chambers, and part of it came over this issue of reparations. There were several bills. There were two bills that were coming in that were supposed to be voted on that night, dealing with the issue of reparations. One of them dealt with it helping establish a fund for reparations. The second bill that dealt with this particular issue was creating a government agency that would look into if anyone was eligible or not to receive this type of funds, but it would just create kind of the office itself to start looking and getting some of the work done. And so those were two separate bills that were supposed to come up. And what I found interesting is that at the last minute, the members of the Black Caucus, the Democratic Black Caucus, who had been working on these bills to bring them up to the floor for the last several years, and had been, working with the committees that was put together by Governor Newsom, apparently got word from Governor Newsom or got word from somewhere else and saying, hey, hold them up, don't bring them forward, and I don't want you to vote for them. And they decided to hold them up and not vote for them. And so chaos erupted, like I said, not just on the floor, but outside of the chambers.
Right. When it came time for them to put their money where their mouth is, they were not willing to do it. And if they really were interested in the legislation that they were talking about, that they had apparently been working on for years, you let the chips fall where they may. I've long said, Hector, morality should outweigh anything and everything. And if you believe in what you're doing and it's going to hurt some political opponent somewhere else, oh well, you're doing what you think is right. And but the truth is, everything is politics. Everything. There's nothing that's not. And politics was the reason why these bills didn't move forward. And we can guess why. But I suspect they didn't want to hurt candidates at the local, state, and federal level.
Well, and you've got these one of the shouting matches, and we'll try to put a link.
Can I add one other thing on? And that was the exact threat the supporters of the bill said they were going to do. They were going to hold responsible the Democrat nominee for president because they would not let these bills come forward. So that's a consequence they may have to suffer for not moving it forward.
And it'll be interesting to see how much more, because I know they're being vocal right now. They've got a petition that they're trying to get signatures for. They've indicated that that they are going to be holding some sort of rallies, going to protesting. Some of the members of the California Black Caucus. At the same time, there was a big shouting match that occurred on the floor. We'll try to include that video into this. And so what happened is you've got an assembly member, Bill Asaley, who was saying, you know what? Because he was the one that they ended up shutting down and wouldn't let him speak. And so he basically, started shouting. He said, hey, why don't you bring these bills up? Bring them up to vote. If you care so much about them, bring them up to vote. And then you have this member of the California Black Caucus, I think it's Isaac Bryant, who kind of got in his face a little bit. And he said, you wouldn't even vote for him. He goes, how do you know? And so there's a video of them kind of getting confrontation with one another. And Assembly Member Bill Asaley basically says, hey, why don't you bring them up here and let's have a discussion about it. If you cared about these things, you would bring them up for a vote. And you could just see that tension in that room on the final day of the legislative session. And there's a lot of folks that are no longer going to be with us in the Assembly and the Senate because of term limits, but these two are going to be there for several years to come. And word is now that you've got the Black Caucus that is now saying, well, we're going to bring these up for next year, and we're going to end up having we're going to bring them up for discussion next year, and maybe we'll end up having another vote. But this has got to leave a lot of folks who've been working on this legislation, who've been working on this issue for several years, really upset at the fact that they were so close to be able to get that point to get a vote on it, and no vote was had.
Well, coincidence or not, the next day there was a rally to support, I believe it was Proposition 6, and one of the members of the Black Caucus was going to be one of the key speakers. Prop 6 is under the guise of ending slavery in prisons. You can't make prisoners work a job if they don't want to. And one of the main speakers was a member of the Black Caucus, and people can read between the lines any way they want. I think it was a she did not show up to speak. And I'm guessing again, it's because they think this issue will hurt candidates on the ballot at the local, state, and national level. And they do not want to do that.
So Larry, what should they do? I mean, I know you talked about, you've got a moral compass. If you think it's morally correct, you go, let the chips fall where they may. But they made a bunch of promises. They went out there, held all these committee hearings. They went around the state and held these public forums. They went through this whole,
So can I just give you what my guess is?
Yeah.
My guess is Governor Newsom promised them that they'll put an urgency clause in the measures next year, which allows them to be implemented 30 days after they're passed. So yeah, there'll have to be new pieces of legislation because it's a new legislative year, but they can speed through the process and have them on the governor's desk by June and implemented before July 4th.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised to see something like that happen.
I think that I would normally agree with you on that, but I don't know how I got to believe that they called up from up top and said, hey, we're in a deficit. We're going to be in a deficit next year. This thing just isn't right now. And,
right.
I could be completely wrong on that, but it's just, there is that frustration and I understand it, whether you agree with the issue or not, there's a genuine frustration is why, we worked on this thing for years and years and years. We got so close to it. You don't allow us to vote on it, and you don't even tell us why. That's what I think is big frustration. At least with
Republicans, the Democrats will tell you during the suspense hearing, and for people that may or may not know what that is, that's where they decide whether bills are going to move forward. that have any economic impact to the economy, they decide if they can move forward or not. At least Republicans get their bills killed at that point, or in committee. They literally let these bills live all the way to the little last day of session, thinking they would come forward. So I kind of understand where the anger from the supporters of these bills are coming from.
Yeah.
They didn't have to be there on a Saturday at 10 p.m. thinking that the bills were going to move forward. They could have been told 3 months ago that it wasn't going to happen, 6 months ago. But something happened that they didn't think this was in their political best interest to move. And my guess is there's, in a non-election year of 2025, they'll be throwing a political bone and urgency clauses in them so they can go into effect immediately.
Yeah, but
the governor has not let deficits stop him in the past. I suspect he's not going to let it stop him in the future.
Well, we'll see how this issue comes up, but it's the other interesting topic that arose from it. You had a split within the two Democrat leaders in the Assembly and the Senate. You've got Governor Gavin Newsom that in the last 5 days of session goes out and throws this massive piece of legislation out there where he wants to regulate the oil industry and basically say, you guys are going to have to go out and put in reserve, I didn't provide the number, but you're going to have to put in reserve oil, gasoline, so that when you go through your maintenance of going from a summer blend to winter blend. And so what happens in California is we go through a phase that doesn't happen in other states. And so we go and we have this different type of gasoline that's provided during the summer, and we have a different gasoline that has to be created during the winter, and it's a summer and winter blend. Well, we used to have about 30 refineries in the state of California, but because of all these dang regulations, because of all these heartaches coming in from the governor's office and his administrators, we are now down to about 8 refineries in California. And we expect another one to go offline in about a year or so. And so they all have to go and switch. And it's not like you could just flip a button to switch. They've got to go change their entire formula, change their operations for the summer and winter blend. And it happens twice a year. And so when you shut down these refineries, gas prices tend to go up a little bit more because you've got less gasoline. And it's not like it's not like California, unlike other states. We don't import it. We refine it here because it's a special blend, and we put it out. And so he now wanted to have this regulation on that process, and the process of being able to store gasoline. But the thing is that, he threw that whole thing like 5 days before the end of session. It got a lot of people upset, a lot of people on the Democratic side saying, hey, why are you going to have us do this? You already scored this as it's going to increase gas prices. And now you're going to throw this at us 5 days before the end of session without any committee hearings, without any real experts or analysis as to what the impacts are going to be. And kudos to the Senate. They said, we're not going to do it. We're not going to take it up. The Assembly was kind of more amenable to want to take it up, but they, eventually it didn't get taken up. And now we've got a situation, Larry, where the governor's indicated, well, we're going to have a special session. Now that the legislature's done, we're going to have to call everyone in the next couple of weeks, and you guys are going to have to deal with this legislation. And that's what the governor's are kind of putting, his hand on his fist down and saying, this is what you guys are going to do.
And I would. There's no bet I wouldn't place that whatever the legislation is, it's not going to lower the price of gas by 1 penny. It can only have the opposite effect. And the governor never openly talks about why California's national average is $4.65, while the state average is $4.65 a gallon as of today, and the national average is $3.30 a gallon. He never talks about why the average price of gas, according to AAA, is $2.90 in Texas, Louisiana, states like South Carolina, and why they're $4.65 in California. He knows the reason. It's because of the two blends we have are forced to create. Two, the amount of taxes we place on a gallon of gasoline in California compared to the rest of the nation. We pay a lot more in taxes compared to any other state in the United States. And that adds to it. It never wants to be addressed. People are not complaining about gas prices in Texas at $2.90 a gallon. They're not. But here, we pay an average of $4.65, and he wants to control. I get on a tangent on this. You have to excuse me. He wants to control something he can't control. On an area he can control, creating water storage. He's ignored it for 6 years. 6 years, and the only reason why he's gotten a get out of jail free card is we've had a couple rainy years in a row that's allowed our reservoirs to be filled more than normal. But the scientific experts are predicting a less rainy year this year. And so there may be water restrictions next year. And if there are, it's because of the governor and Democrats not building more water storage.
Yeah.
Our population has doubled since the last time we've built new storage. Doubled from 20 million to 40 million. Yet he wants to somehow regulate and manage, making sure we have a reservoir of gasoline when a situation may occur in California. I just find it kind of ironic.
I do too. And where the hell are you going to put all these tanks? Because
Right.
if you're going to have a reservoir of gasoline, you're going to have to go and get the land, and then you're going to have to create. I'm making the assumption you're going to have to go create underground storage units to hold. And it's not like you're going to hold 200 gallons of gasoline, and you're going to have to hold quite a bit of gasoline. We use 1.8 million barrels of oil every single day in California. That's a lot of crude oil that we use in the state, and a lot of it is not just because of the fuels we put in our vehicles, but you got to remember we've got about 30 military bases in the state of California that we go supply them with their gasoline. But at the same time, all your little Amazon packages, all the planes that are flying back and forth, we provide them, and that's just on the fuel sector. I mean, we have another huge sector, which is the manufacturing sector. I mean, wind turbines use oil. As we got petroleum-based products. We got over 6,000 of them that we end up producing, here in the United States, around the world. Everything from your sunglasses to items of medical equipment. These are all petroleum-based products, and so it's not just fuel that goes into your car. And I don't understand. First of all, you're going to have a special session. If you hold it before the election, you're going to put the members out there to go vote on something that's going to increase gas prices before before the voters get to them. And at the same time, how well does the state of California even manage their own situation? I mean, we've seen the disaster that they've done with homeless projects. We've seen the disaster they've had with EDD, where they couldn't even have a computer system that let them know that people on death row were trying to collect unemployment insurance.
Right.
And they were sending checks over to these people who were in prison. I mean, it's like, first off, put your computer system that if the address is coming from Folsom Prison or LA Men's Central Jail, that maybe we shouldn't be sending them unemployment checks. And
I'm a simple consumer of gasoline. That's it, or whatever other products have oil in it. And so I don't like paying $4.65 a gallon. It angers me when I pull up to the pump. And your first reaction is to blame the producers of that. But I've been in the system long enough to know, go look at the national map and what others are paying. I wouldn't be mad driving up tomorrow and paying $2.90 a gallon. And there's a reason why there's a difference, and it's not the oil companies. Why Texans can pay $2.90 a gallon and Californians have to pay $4.65. That's not a problem created by oil companies. That's a problem created by government, period.
Yeah.
Period. But Governor Newsom thinks most are just going to drive up to the pump and blame the oil company because they don't look at the AAA map and see that it's really a lawmaker's problem and not a oil producer's problem.
Well, Larry, they've got this catchphrase, and you know, you got Harris that's now using it, price gouging. You've got the governor using it for against the oil industry. You got Harris is now using it over to talk about grocers or markets that are price gouging, and they seem like nice buzzwords. They it's like, oh shoot, I'm getting gouged, and someone's trying to cheat me out of money. But I think I know you're right in the sense of, for a lot of these politicians, they just need to look in the mirror. It is the regulations, it is the taxes, it is the fees, it is all these different mandates that you are throwing in against this industry. And there is graphics that show how much more we're paying, in taxes, in regulations, and in fees. That is leading to why gas prices are higher here in the state of California than they are in other places around the United States. And so,
but why wouldn't I price gouge everywhere? Why am I just picking California? That's the part I no one ever answers. Even like, why? But get everyone else. So if you can make more money simply by price gouging, then why aren't you price gouging in all these other states I've talked about? I'm not making up the price. Go to the map and click on the average price per gallon in every other state in the union. They don't pay nearly what we pay. Even our neighbors that are just across the border in Arizona and Nevada pay a lot less per gallon. Why isn't it called price gouging there? Yet they were concerned enough, those states, our neighboring states, that wrote letters of opposition to this special session saying, excuse me, Governor, but if you do this, you're going to raise the price of gas in our state. And we don't want that to happen. So what we know is this, is any new laws that are created are going to increase gas prices, not lower them. Yeah.
And there's got to be a motivation there behind all this stuff. I mean, is it headlines? Is it, you mentioned that you've got the governors of Arizona and Nevada, which are two battleground states, that they have sent in letters to the governor. You're right, saying that, hey, don't do this because your own government agency, they're like Gavin Newsom, your own government agency has indicated that if you go ahead and do this, it is going to lead to higher gas prices. And it's going to lead to a situation where it's not just higher gas prices for you, but it's going to trickle into our two states. And so, this special session where you're trying to regulate the refineries, it is going to come and trickle down to us. And so they've indicated that, we don't want you this. And whether he listens to, I don't think he will. I think he's on a crusade, and I think he'll just kind of do what Gavin wants to do. But there's,
I'm gonna put my tin foil hat on for a second.
Yeah.
I think he's packing his resume. I think he's taken these last 2 years so he can say he seriously addressed homelessness, he seriously addressed gas prices, and I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't a couple more issues that he packs his resume with, because if Vice President Harris doesn't win in November, he becomes the leading candidate to be the nominee for the Democrats in 2028. And what better way to look like a leader than to have a packed resume saying, yeah, I'm holding oil companies to the feet to the fire. Here's what I did in California. I'm taking homelessness seriously. I stopped funding cities who weren't addressing the issue. I'm taking affordable housing seriously by taking these communities to court who haven't addressed the affordable housing issue. Well, where has he been since he was elected? What was his first year, 2014, or 2016? Where was he? I think he's packing his resume to make him look like a leader that's a middle of the road leader that can get crossover votes when the time comes.
do you think he's trying to screw over um, Kamala Harris?
I think
Do you think he's trying to screw over her campaign? And let me kind of lay out this thing. So this election comes down to several battleground states, right? Two of which are Arizona and Nevada. Obviously, we got Michigan, Pennsylvania, a lot of these other places. But you've got the governors there. You've got the leadership there that is imploring the governor and saying, don't hold this special session because it's going to cost us more in gasoline prices here. Now, he is not listening to anyone. He is charging forward with this. Even as of a few hours ago, before we got onto this podcast or video cast, however you look at it, is he's like, we're moving forward. The details are in print now, and so we need, he's basically saying, the legislature, do your job and hold a special session and deal with it.
again, I'll put. I don't think he'd be disappointed if Trump won, because he'd be governor and be able to fight Trump for 2 years on a national stage and get national headlines for 2 years. And when his term's up, he can immediately announce he's running for president. You have to look at the age issue. He's 60. He's not 40 anymore. He's 60. And if Harris wins in December,
Yeah, yeah.
he's suddenly 68 when his next window of opportunity appears. So, yeah, I think some of that is. I don't think anything he does is by accident, and I think all of what he does is self-serving. And so, in some way, this helps him, and we're going to find out in which ways in the weeks and months, moving forward.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to agree with you on this. Is that I think there seems to be more there than just I need to fight oil companies, because he's not on the campaign trail. He
didn't
was
speak at the DNC.
right, and the thing is that when Joe Biden was the nominee, or he was still running for president. I mean, Joe Biden was okay with Gavin going out everywhere.
Right.
And even, I mean, and here's the crazy part. Even when they had the debate, he had Gavin become his spin guy for him.
Right.
And he had Gavin traveling around all these different states. He had Gavin going to these national media to go and push the Biden agenda forward. Yet what happened to Harris? Harris was like nowhere to be found, and we would kind of joke around, is like, is he going to replace her with him? And so but now that the switch has been made, now that you've got Harris now running for president, or being their nominee, you don't see Gavin anywhere. There seems to be no role for him, and if we just kind of play this thing out, there are two things that could happen. Harris wins, Gavin's going to have to go and see if he can get some sort of cabinet position.
Right.
But then it's a cabinet position. I mean, there's few positions in there that have the notoriety, that have the I don't know, the gravitas that I think someone like him would want. I mean, I don't think he's going to go become the Treasury Secretary, or someone in the Treasury does and gets your you got your name on the dollar bill. It's got to be a position where he's out in the press, he's out talking, but at the same time, it's not about his agenda. It'll have to be hers. Have to be her plans if she ends up winning.
He was, he was willing to be patient to be lieutenant governor when Brown ran in 2010. He was young enough to be lieutenant governor for 2 terms. He's not young enough just to sit around and be some ambassador or low-level cabinet position for 8 years if Harris wins. And there are some rising stars in the Democrat Party. Say what you want. There were some pretty impressive speakers who spoke. The governor of Maryland, for example, I noted was a pretty dynamic speaker, and he's relatively young. Pete Buttigieg, the secretary, the Secretary of Transportation's another up and coming young.
They got Ben
politician.
Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. You've got
Yes.
the governor of Illinois too.
Yeah, they have a young, deep bench, and suddenly Gavin Newsom isn't part of that young, deep bench. He's an elder statesman in 8 years of the party. So it's now, meaning now 2028 or never.
Yeah, or yeah, you're right. 20. You're right. 28 or never. Or yeah, because at that time he would be 64.
Remember, if Trump wins, he gets to fight him for 2 years on a national stage. We're the 5th largest economy in the nation. We are, according to him, we're the innovator of everything, from, gas-powered cars to whatever new thing he comes up with. So he'll be able to duke it out. He'll be that guy getting to be interviewed every time Trump talks about something that affects the nation. He's going to be the go-to guy. Again, I'm putting on my tin hat. I would not be I don't think he'll be disappointed if it's a Trump presidency come November, because he then becomes the de facto opposition to the president.
Yeah,
and then he's only got 2 years to wait to run against a guy who won't. Trump doesn't get a third term, so
right.
He gets to run against whoever that nominee is. I think he wanted Biden to be the nominee. He wanted Biden to lose, and he wanted to fight Trump for 2 more years and then run a presidential campaign for 2 years. That calendar works perfectly.
It does work perfectly. The only thing that does not work perfectly is if they did. Well, yes, but if they also have the special session, the other thing that does not work perfectly is now you're going to have the Democratic members there who are, because they hold the vast majority here in California, that could easily pass this legislation that he wants them to do in a special session. Because at the end of the day, all that's going to translate, as everything that is translated, is they have these great fancy words. We're going to call it price gouging. You're going to say the oil companies are bad. But the question is, if we got so few refineries, they're running at about a 95 to 96% capacity, when the hell are they going to go out and be able to produce the excess gasoline in order to store it? Where are you going to create these storage containers? And the other thing, too, is with all the damn legislation they've passed, where you can't even have oil exports or oil wells near what they call sensitive receptors unless they're 3,200 feet away. So how are you going to create these tanks? And are they going to also have the same distance from sensitive receptors, which are schools, parks, hospitals, libraries, and everything else? And if so, then where do you put these tanks? Are they above ground? Are they below ground? Who's going to build them? And what's the cost going to be to do this? And are you going to fire up a couple more refineries after we've got all these that have shut down to be able to do this? So there's a lot of, I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of unanswered. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of details that have yet to be implemented. And I'm afraid that what they're going to do with this legislation is say, we'll give it to this committee. It is their job to go figure it out. And if there's a cost, then there's a cost, and and basically we end up paying that cost at the very end.
Whether we want to or not.
Yeah, that's the thing, is whether we want to or not, because we need to function around. And I just, I had a discussion with a reporter the other day, and we talked about petroleum, and I said, it is in everything we do. And he goes, well, that's just one sector. I said, that's a sector that influences everything. I said, it influences transportation, manufacturing. It also influences agriculture. It influences the movement of goods and services that we have. I said, and the other thing too, I said, it influences our housing. And he goes, how does it influence our housing? I said, well, you got to get the lumber from somewhere. I go, and you got to transport it out. At the same time, a lot of these tools that you're using or machinery, where to cut the logs, to put the logs, put it in place, take them over to Home Depot, take them back over to your home. All that requires petroleum. I go at the same time, if you're going to build a housing tract and you're going to lay asphalt around, I said, those are all petroleum-based products. Things that go into the house themselves are petroleum-based products. And so I go, it's all so intertwined that the minute you increase the price of gasoline, the price of petroleum, the price of oil, the minute you increase that, it is a trickle effect that it has on everything else. And the problem that we're having right now, and it falls right back onto the governor's office, as it falls back into the legislature, as it falls back into the regulators, is they are putting us in a situation, they have been over these last couple of years, where they are forcing California to buy this oil from foreign countries because they want to end domestic oil production. And as you know, Larry, all those regulations come at a cost. And we are now, you and I and everyone else who's watching or hearing this, we are now paying $25 billion every single year to buy oil from foreign countries, foreign nations, which then get the oil, put it on a truck, take it to their docks, put it on a ship, goes across the ocean, lands back in our docks, put it in a truck, and take it to a refinery to get refined, and then put it on a truck to then get it over to the gasoline station or to create other products. And so
then I get to drive up and pay $4.65 a gallon, while the driver in Texas gets to pull up and pay $2.90.
That's because they're producing it themselves.
Right. From what you just described is the reason.
Right. That is one of the big major reasons. Plus all the taxes and fees that we add here in California, right. In addition to, and here's the crazy part, Larry, is we're in a deficit right now. And we're going to be in a deficit next year for the state. Can you imagine that $25 billion, what that would mean investing it back here into our state? All the jobs it creates, all the different money that whether it's through wages, whether it's through, because they'll charge taxes on that money that we could put back into our system. And so, and then when you look at this other thing, and this is the part, and this is why I'm getting on my high horse right now, is these are jobs that pay on average of $123,000 a year, $123,000 a year. And a lot of these folks that are in this industry, you only need a high school degree or a GED to get into this industry. They have people, and it is one of the few industries out there that they provide a job to people who are second chancers. These are people who were formerly incarcerated, who are now get an opportunity to get a new start in life. And so what this state is doing is, by going out and making it so difficult for us to be able to stay in operation, and I mean the domestic oil producers to stay in operation, by adding all these additional regulations and all these additional costs. And at what? So that we can go and have to import it from another foreign country and make them wealthy? Why can't we make ourselves wealthy? Why can't we make our own communities wealthy? And I think that is where the frustration is coming in from a lot of folks who are saying, because you talk about $4.65. I was in LA this past week, and it was $5.10 there for a gallon of gasoline.
Right.
And the thing is, it's like all that stuff is just, it hits our pocketbook. But the other thing too it does is it takes jobs away from this beautiful state, which I love, and that's a part of the frustrating part is we have the answers, we have the solutions, and a lot of it is let's invest in what we have as opposed to having to buy it from somewhere else, and it's just maddening.
Your argument is, why we produce so many products overseas is because it's cheaper. The consumer, me and you, we end up getting to pay less for that product that's in the local stores. But this is the opposite. We import this product that ends up costing us more than if we did it here, and the people who would be employed would be upper middle class taxpayers. It's not like they're minimum wage workers. No, they're $123,000 a year workers. So it's this ridiculous. What's happening is it's the whole thing gets turned on its head. We're producing oil. We're bringing in oil that's going to cost us more, yet we'll outsource other jobs because we'll use the argument we'll get to pay less.
Right. And then there's the other arguments that the environmentalists and the governor and and this administration uses, which is, once again, it makes no logical sense. They said, well, we're doing it because of climate change. And it's interesting. I was talking to Andreas, earlier this week, and we were having a discussion on a particular different issue. But he says, Hector, you got to realize that this is called the new wave of American activism. You're not looking to solve anything, and if you are going to complain about something, you have your blinders on, because it doesn't matter if you're screwing over somewhere else. And so with this particular issue, you've got these activists and this administration says, well, we're doing it because we're going to protect the health and safety of our climate and of our people. Well, here's the thing is, California has 25 local, state, and federal agencies that oversee the oil industry. Not only that, but we have some of the strictest laws in the world on how we produce it, how we pump it out, everything else that goes with it. And yet we are going out and buying 50% of all the oil that's produced in the Amazon rainforest.
Right.
They are chopping down trees. They're moving indigenous people out of those areas, and we are buying that oil. 50% of all the oil that's coming out of the Amazon rainforest, it is coming to California. I mean, you tell me if you're gonna go out there and scream climate change, how that is actually protecting the climate. How is it that we're going to go buy oil from Iraq that still does flaring? We're going to go buy oil from Saudi Arabia, those are the three largest producers, importers of oil that we purchase from, and put it on a ship, take it across the ocean, put it back in the truck, and get it back around. And you're going to call that, what's the climate cost of there, as opposed to pumping it out here, sending it on a pipe to the refinery, and it gets refined there.
It's not even the argument where we can say importing oil, well, at least it's better for our world. No, it's literally making it worse for our world. It's making the exact issues that the people here say they care about worse. It's creating more pollution. It's enhancing climate change. Because the regulations that are in place here aren't in place in the rainforests of Ecuador or other countries where we're importing our oil.
Brazil and Ecuador, yeah.
Right. So when I pay $4.65 and I'm not saving the world, I'm making it worse. And that's what's really disgusting about the whole situation, is we could be doing it here and regulating it. So it does help climate change. It does help air pollution. It does help save the rainforest, but somehow we're willing just to turn our back and pretend like that's not happening.
And that goes, once again, as Andre said, it's the new American, activism, right? Where we put on these blinders, where we think we're doing well, but at the end of the day, I mean, when you really look at it, you're making things worse. And the worst part about it is, when you look out, I mean, we're in an election year right now, so there's a lot of polling going out. I mean, two of the main things that people are having the toughest time is the housing and inflation. You can help solve some of these things by making this product less expensive, by empowering people to actually have some of these good paying jobs. There are 50,000 people that work in the oil industry. Can you imagine if this thing continues to go down the way it's going right now, where you've got legislation that already got passed that is now going to the governor's office? You've got certain legislation that is being implemented right now, and that is looking to shut down about 15,000 oil wells. Can you imagine if we had to go out and let go of 30,000 or 25,000 of these people I mean, those are families. Those are people who make an average of $123,000 a year with a GED high school degree. Where the hell do you think these people are going to go out and get a job? Are you going to go and say, well, I'll tell you what, $40,000, go be a solar panel installer, or go and, what jobs are they going to get that are going to try to even pay them anything close to that?
Right.
And yet we're willing to go and trade in those people here that are here in California that are making those jobs. We're willing to trade in those jobs, that family, so that we can go buy oil from foreign countries. And that is why I honestly believe, that is why I think you've got a lot of people in California that are just fed up and frustrated, because the more that they understand what is happening, the more they don't like it. And that is, and I know you and I have had this discussion before, and I know how you feel about him, but at the same time, that is one of the reasons why Donald Trump still becomes popular in certain situations, because that is what he's fighting about. Now, give Kamala credit. She's starting to adopt. She goes, hey, I want fracking. I was against it, but now I want fracking. And so it'll be an interesting play to see how they deal with this whole economy, especially as it deals with oil production.
That's true. And well, I don't disagree with you. It's the one thing that makes him popular is the promise to keep prices down and drill domestically.
Yeah, and Larry, I'm sorry, I know I went on my high horse there for a while, but it just gets me, it gets me frustrated, because, I get to see it, I get to, work in this thing, and, I deal with it all the time, and it seems like a simple solution, and it's maddening to see all these different press conferences and everything else, and I'm like, and you could see right through these lies, and it's like, we just need to do it here. We need to empower our people, and it's heartbreaking when I get to see some of these folks, and I'll have Andreas put into this video or down below a link to Charles, who is working in the oil industry right now. He was incarcerated for, I think it was 28 years for murder, and once he got out of prison, he went to go try to get a job, and the only place that really gave him the opportunity was the oil industry. And he now has a home, he's got a family, he's got, and he's self-supportive. And to take those chances, or that ability for someone to get a second chance, or to other people who, and we talk about this so many times, it's like, you don't have to have a college degree to be successful, but now you're looking to eliminate 25, 20,000, 10,000 jobs of people who are being successful with a high school degree or a GED, and all in the name of climate change, or we're going to go give this money out to another country. It gets at me, and gets me fired up on this thing, and I don't know, it's absurd.
It's legitimate.
Yeah,
it's legitimate.
So Larry, I'd like to end it on a happier note. So you're looking forward to you got your Packers playing, right, soon?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Coincidentally, they're playing in Brazil tomorrow. So, yep. I'm glad the football season's here. If Green Bay can keep injuries down, then that's every good football team's Achilles heel. I think it's going to be a good season for both Green Bay and San Francisco.
Yeah, I'll have to tell Amy about that.
Plays the Jets on Monday night, and look, now I'm not so much an Aaron Rodgers fan, so I hope they put it to him on Monday. Yeah. But it's going to be a fun season. Yeah.
What's interesting? I saw the Amy actually pointed this out to me, is that ESPN now, when you look at their line, right, the betting line, or to see kind of the odds and so forth. So what they used to do before is you could see, let's say your Packers, right? You could see, okay, are they favored? Are they not favored? What's the over under in points? But now what you could do is you could even see the Packers and what the point spread is for the following game. Right. You would normally have to wait until that Tuesday or Wednesday before that Sunday game to get what the line was, but now you can get, for some teams you can get it 2 to 3 weeks away, and so we were having this discussion today about it, And, the only thing I can think of, I said, well, maybe it just makes it easier for people to want to bet on the games. Now I don't have to wait until that Tuesday or Wednesday to find out what the point spread is. Now I can make my bets and say, okay, I'm making my bets for the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, gambling is a whole nother subject, and how the NFL really has gotten into bed with the gambling industry and made it okay. I hope that integrity holds up, but I fear that at some point there's going to be a incident that's going to tarnish the image of the NFL. I'm not a big bettor on games. It makes me harder to purely root for my team, and makes me nervous. I'm nervous if I put $10 on something. So
yeah.
But it is where it is what it is. Gambling is a part of the NFL, and I suspect you're right. People can place bets further out because they feel more people will do it, and the bettors must, or the industry must feel like it's an advantage to them. But I have to imagine, and Jordan Love getting injured in week 1 really impacts whatever that person bet 3 weeks into the future, one way or the other.
Yeah.
One way or the other. So,
but it allows me the ability to cast my bets now, believing that they're all going to be healthy, right? And so
right.
that line may be, Packers up by, Packers favored by 5, but you got the other, let's say second team you guys play, if one of the other key players gets injured, I mean, hell, that line may change to 15, or I don't know, whatever it may change, right? Or one of your guys could change, and now you're under that thing. But I've still got my bet at 5, and so it'll be interesting to see this year, on the bet side. But I think even for fans, because Amy likes to look and see where her 49ers are. Are they favored or are they not? The closer it is, the more nervous she gets about the game and gets more fired up about it. But for her to be able to see this thing for the next 2 to 3 weeks, it gets her even that much more fired up about. It's like, okay, all right, this is going to be a tough game, but this next one's going to be it seems to be a little bit easier. But and the difference could only be like 1 or 2 points.
Right.
But nonetheless,
I mean, San Francisco's good enough; they're going to be favored in probably every game, unless there's a major injury. I mean, that's how good they are. So, they should have a good season.
Yeah. I'm so waiting to see how my Raiders do. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not so much them.
All right, Larry. It's great talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Care.
Until next time. Bye now.